Hey everyone, welcome to the West Side Podcast. So glad you're here. So glad you're taking some time just to be with us, to listen, to go a little deeper. On these Monday podcasts, we're going to be diving a little bit deeper into the sermon from Sunday. Hopefully having an opportunity to say some things that I wish I would have said on Sunday or clarify some things that I am like, do I even agree with what I just said in that sermon? And really kind of unpack the message a little bit deeper. Think about how this applies to our lives. Think about, how does this actually play itself out in our lives? So we pray that these conversations are encouraging for you. Take a moment to subscribe to the West Side Family Church YouTube channel. Share this with a friend, like it. That helps us get the word a little bit out there a little bit better. But just like last week, join today with Pastor Troy. Fired up to be here, man. Fired up to dive into this whole idea, this whole topic of detours, delays, and the goodness of God. Thinking about God's providence as we just navigate all the things of life, man.
Well, it's isn't that like the topic that just, it's so hot. It's like you become a Christ follower. I did when I was young, and it's just like now, and I started getting to the point where like I realized maybe God has a plan, and there are things that are better than other things, and then I started realizing I'm not a very good boss, and I'm not a very good king, and I need a better plan than the one I'm coming up with.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this idea. Is like, well, not only how is God working through the circumstances that I'm living through, but what is his plan? Like, how does it work itself out in the future?
Yeah.
I talk with a lot of young people who they're just, figuring out their careers, they're adulting, right? They're trying to figure out life, where am I going? What's my future like? Who am I going to marry? All those things. And so this idea of God's providence in hand is a really big deal. And so I thought this is a very poignant message, especially when you talk through the life of Joseph.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different places you could go in the Bible to talk about this idea of providence. And I think maybe I'll read a definition of providence. I know maybe for some of you it's a newer term. It's kind of a theologically weighted, heavy term. But when we're talking about the providence of God, what we're talking about here is God's ability to orchestrate the events of history and the individual choices of the entire human race, both good and evil, to achieve his ultimate plans and purposes for your good and his glory. This is a wild thing to believe.
Amen.
As Christians. Right? I mean, we're not saying God causes evil. God does not do evil. He's not the author of evil. And yet somehow, in his sovereignty, God is able to work in the background through all of the individual choices of billions of people on the planet to achieve his ultimate means and purposes for the world and for our lives. And that's a crazy thing to think about. Like, man, God he's very much in the details. He's working in the background. He doesn't cause all things, but he can still cause all things to work for good in the end. And this is who we believe our God is. This is what we believe he can do. And his providence, the doctrine of God's providence is one of those doctrines where I find great comfort because I've had seasons where, man, I've taken wrong turns. I've made mistakes. I've had seasons where I've been wronged by others, betrayed by others, hurt by others, and I've walked through valleys and mountains and all the things of life. And I've had those moments where I've just thought, God, are you aware? Are you aware of what's happening? Are you involved at all? How are you going to work this out? Where are we going here? Where is this thing headed? And yet often when I look back over the arc of my life up to this point, I can see the fingerprints of God. And I think it was a John Eldredge message that I heard years ago. He talked about this, and I thought this was a really cool idea. He said when he comes to the end of a year, he'll look through his photos and his journals. He'll look through his iPhone photos and his journals, and he'll just spend some time with the Lord praying and asking God he says, it's like I'm dusting, like a detective, I'm dusting for the fingerprints of God. I want to see the themes that were happening in my heart and in my life. And, what was God doing? What was he up to? But there's something about looking back where we can see more clearly than when we're in the thick of it, feeling the pain, feeling the discomfort, feeling the emotional swings of all the stuff of life, where it's really hard to see what God is up to.
Well, theologians have been wrestling with this for millennia, right? I mean, everyone's got to, they think they got it nailed down, right?
If John Calvin had a podcast.
Right. John Calvin versus John Wesley. Let's go.
Let's go.
But I mean, this sense that like to what degree does God control or guide or redeem, and I like you said, I think we really only know in hindsight, like how many times have you looked back in your life and go, God, thank you for not giving me what I thought I wanted.
Yes.
Whether it was that girl
yes.
or that job or that, whatever the situation was, you just kind of go, he actually knew better than I did.
Yeah.
And even though at the time it felt like a loss.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, I'm going, well, I'm sure glad you have a perspective that I don't have.
Yeah.
And you redeem those things. So you come at this, which is really interesting, through the life of Joseph.
Yeah.
So I have a great, great love for Joseph, right? He was one of my favorite guys. When I was a young man in my 20s in Los Angeles, trying to be a musician guy, and
just writing some bangers, man.
Yeah,
writing some incredible music out there.
It was rough, and I remember I went through this season. I was just like really feeling down, like nothing was working. My music wasn't working. Relationships weren't working. I was dead broke. My car died, and I'm living in this house in Pasadena. It's like Saturday night in spaghetti-o stained sweatpants, just feeling like a loser. No one's around. And I'm going to pray.
I just love this picture you're painting right now.
And I go to the foot of my bed, and I'm like, God, Joseph was in prison for 13 years.
Yeah.
I can't do this another week.
Yeah.
I need some direction.
Yeah.
I need you to move, because I figured out I can't make the things happen. And so I guess what brought Joseph to mind for you is sort of like the archetypal story for all of us, and this like seeking God's will and how is he going to redeem what I'm walking through now.
Yeah, I think the reason when I was thinking about providence that Joseph really came to mind, and I kind of opened with this in the sermon yesterday, the whole idea of 50-20 vision. And I just, I told the story of me losing my vision over the past couple years, and it's such a wild thing when your vision starts to go, because you don't notice it at first. And then sort of one day you wake up and you're like, man, I can't read the road signs. And I'm squinting to see the score on the Georgia game on Saturdays. I'm like, man, do I need a bigger TV? Do I need to stand closer? Right. Like, man, it's all getting blurry. And I finally went to the DMV to get my license after moving to Kansas. And, I had to stand on the line and read the letters, and I couldn't read them. I couldn't read the bottom 2.5, 3 lines of letters. And I realized, man, our vision fades slowly. And I think the same can be true when we're in seasons of pain or discomfort, or just in the thick of life, the busyness of life. Our trust in God, our vision of God, our passion for God, our sense of mission and purpose with Jesus, if we're not careful, it can just slowly fade.
Yeah.
And it's like losing your vision. And especially if you're in a hard season like you were in, especially if you're in a season of pain and suffering and discomfort or delays and detours or whatever, it's like, man, God, where are you? We begin to get cynical, disillusioned, all those sort of things. And the providence of God is like a lens that we can put over our cynicism. We can put the providence of God over our doubt. We can put the providence of God over our pain. And the providence of God says, it might feel like God doesn't see you. Yeah. It might feel like he's not involved, but he is right here with you, and he is working it out, and he is authoring a better story for your future. And it's this anchoring thing. And the reason that was a long side note, but the reason I love the story of Joseph is because when he comes to the end of his life in Genesis 50, verse 20, talking to his brothers, he just says the most incredible thing. He says, as for you, his brothers who sold him into slavery, attempted to murder him, thought better of it and said, we'll just sell him into slavery instead. I mean, just the ultimate betrayal from family members who were jealous of him. Horrible thing in his story. And he says to them, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. To bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today, for the salvation of many people. And I just thought, man, as Joseph is summarizing his life, he's about to go to the grave. He's about to return to his Father in heaven. And he's looking back over this crazy story arc of his life. And you can read it. You can read it in Genesis, really 35 to the end of the book. And I mean, his story is wild. Betrayals, attempted murder, imprisonment, falsely accused of adultery, injustice against him. And then God sends dreams and he gets exalted from prison to the right hand of Pharaoh. And it's just one twist and turn after another from age 17 all the way to age, I guess it was, 49, 39, something. I can't do math on the spot, but 22 years. It was a 22-year story from when God gave him the dream that one day he would be ruler and others would be bowing to him, to when that dream actually came true. There was so much pain, so much suffering, so many detours, delays, disappointments, all the things. And he looks back over the course of his life and he goes, there's a lot of people, including you, my brothers, who meant harm against me, but God intended it all for good.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if that is not the most clear and profound verse in the Bible on the providence of God,
right,
how God took all of it, even the painful, difficult seasons of life, and wove it together for good. And I just think that's amazing, because even when people have horrible intentions against us, God has intentions for good. And ultimately, his intentions are all that matter. Ultimately, he achieves his intentions, no matter what anybody else's intentions may be. And I think Joseph's story just captures this idea of providence so powerfully.
Well, you frame this so beautifully, because we're all looking for the reason. We're all looking for what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And when you're young, you don't have a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't have a lot of experience. And so in many ways, when you're young, we have to borrow some faith from other people, from our elders. We borrow faith from reading the story of Joseph, like I did. It's like, come on, man, I got to get out of prison. Or like the story of Moses, who's, he was 40 years in the middle of his life tending his father-in-law's sheep.
Yeah.
Like Prince of Egypt, father-in-law's sheep. And 40 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
So he had to wonder, I guess this is it.
Yeah.
I guess this is what I'm doing now, And so I guess I wanted to ask you, was there a season in your life where you thought, well, I guess this is it? Like, has God forgotten me, or is this just the normal now going forward, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's been many seasons like that in different levels, right? I think about the last year of our life, really the last 2 years of our life in particular. I was pastoring and leading a church out in Northern California for the past 8 years, and then God sort of, through a sequence of events, brought that season to an end, and it became clear, like, okay, it's time for me to move on, right? And there were seasons where, man, I think back through leading the church through COVID, we went through some very difficult seasons as a congregation, week after week, where you're sort of showing up as a leader, as a pastor, and having the question, honestly, like, man, if this is what ministry is, I think I'd rather sell lumber at Home Depot. Like, just having some seasons where, man, I was burned out, exhausted, disillusioned. The church was fracturing. People were mad about politics and everything that was happening. And no matter what I did as a leader, I felt like I couldn't hold, the church together in a unified community that was lifting up the name of Jesus, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I remember through that season, which felt like, it really did last for years, just wondering, is this it? Is this what leadership and pastoral ministry looks like?
Right.
And yeah, there are seasons where that's exactly what it looks like. And that's okay. God will give you grace for that. And it doesn't have to be pastoral ministry. It can be whatever you're doing in life. There are going to be difficult seasons where you're probably asking the question, is this it? And Lord, make it stop. And Lord, how do I get out of this? And questioning my call, questioning, is this really what I want to do? Is this what I'm made to do? Am I good at this? Am I not good at this? Just all the insecurities that come when you're in the midst of the storm. And, it was interesting because I felt like we were really called to see the church through that season, to stay committed to the cause of Christ there at that church. And then once it became clear that, okay, we've done all we can do here, and now it's our season to hand this off to the next person. How do we do this well? And how do we do this lovingly? And how do we do this in a way that is a blessing to the church, doesn't hurt the church, because it's not my church, this is Jesus's church. And how do I make this transition with integrity? And for us, there was also this reality of God often did not give us the next step. There were many times in our life, like we knew this season was ending, but we didn't know exactly what season was coming next. And I don't always recommend that. Especially for young people, I'm like, hey, know what you're going to before you take a step like that, unless the situation really calls for it. And that's how we've, for the most part, just operate in our lives. Like the Lord's made it clear where we're going next before he calls us out. And this situation was just different. Yeah. And that was a season where, you're questioning, God, what are you up to? What do I want to do? Am I made for this? And yet through it all, man, I look back now and I'm like, man, his hand was all over that. He was involved in all of it. He was teaching me integrity and character and love for people and how to have an unoffendable heart in really hard situations. And God was growing me up through every single one of those things in a really profound way. And so that's, that one's fresh, and that's a season in my life where I look back and, man, I love what I got to be a part of at that church, love that church, still in touch with so many people there. But also it was a really clear season for me of ministry where in many ways I hit the wall in my own life, hit the wall in my own calling. And I think, man, God loves to let that happen. He loves to let us come to the end of ourselves and cause us to lean on him and trust him as we follow him to the next seasons. But that's what comes to mind.
So in a way, we could say maybe it was an equipping time and a preparatory time. Yeah. And as you push through that season of like, is this it? You can only in hindsight say, oh, this is what he was doing.
Yeah.
Right? This is how he was equipping me in my character, in my calling. Maybe I needed a little humility, or I needed to be broken down a little bit, so that on the other side, there's the next. There's none. This it? This isn't it, but there is a next. Yeah. And I've certainly experienced that so many times.
Have you ever, one of the things that I've found in my life, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this, I think God ordains certain seasons, and I think about the life of Job, right? There were, in the progression of Job's suffering, God removed different hedges of protection around Job's family, right? I mean, it's such a fascinating story, but one of the things that we learned from Job's suffering is that God put limits on it. He said, to Satan, who was asking to sift Job like wheat, he said, you can go this far, but you can't touch that part of Job's life. You can't touch this. You can't go there. And so there are limits to how much suffering God will allow in some way or another. And that's a whole thing to think about, right? You just think about the suffering of the world and you think, man, how does that happen, right? I don't know. These are mysteries, and I don't claim to know. But it does appear from Job's life that it was like this long and no longer, this far and no further, right? And then God brings about redemption in the end. It doesn't negate the horrific pain of the suffering. It doesn't erase what people went through, but there are things that God allows within his sovereign plan that, man, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out for good, but looking back, you can see. And what I was going to ask you and what I think I've found is I think God will allow really hard seasons in our lives to shape and form character within us. And until we learn that lesson, or until that character is shaped in a particular way, he will not release us into the next season.
Yeah.
He won't, for our own good. He's like, you're not ready for that yet. You've got to keep learning this lesson here, or I've got to work some things into your soul here before I entrust you with the next season. And we would do well to pay attention to what the Lord is trying to teach us through the suffering in our current season before we just think about jumping ship and, go into the next season, because, man, each little season and scene of our life is so important for God to work those things out of us and work some things into us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can resist, right?
Yeah.
The lesson.
Yeah.
Because any kind of affliction, any kind of suffering, these things that they're extending our faith, right? It's pushing up. There's a tension that's growing our faith, but you can resist that. It's like, oh, I don't want to grow. I don't want to grow my faith, because the affliction is, like we talked about before, it's a bit of a sacrifice. It's a push. But if we don't learn that, if we don't submit to the lesson, right, we're not going to have the tools we need for the next season. I always think about it like, maybe when you went to school, I don't know. I didn't do the new math. The new math is a mystery to me. But when I was a kid, you would do algebra 1, then you do geometry, then you do algebra 2, then you do trig, right? And the thought was, you don't want to do algebra 2 till you've gotten good at algebra 1, right? And if they just dump you into that next math, you're not going to be able to handle it. You don't have the tools.
I don't think I ever learned any algebra at all. I never got it.
Right.
But I hear what you're saying.
But the point is, it's like, God's not going to give you the gift that's going to make you worse.
Yeah.
Now it may feel that way. I remember when one of my boys was little, not little, he was in high school, and like junior high, and he wanted me to buy him a vintage Mustang, right? Because he wanted to roll up at school and, flex on the haters. And I'm like, son, I'm not going to give that to you. First of all, I don't have it. I can't afford it. But even if I could, I'm not going to give you a gift that's going to make you a worse person.
Yeah. Totally.
So I think, we have a heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Who says, I'm going to give good gifts to my children who ask me. If you ask me for bread, I'm not going to give you a snake or a stone, right? Yeah. And so part of that is like, do I trust his character over my circumstances? And that's why I think we have to borrow from each other's stories.
Yeah.
Until we get old enough to have a track record of his faithfulness. Like you were saying, it's like when you're in the middle of it, it's forest for the trees. You just like, all I see is bark, man.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I have no perspective. It just hurts. It's just hard, and it hurts, and it's taking forever.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, you kind of got bumped out of that into a new season, and you look back and go, oh, that's what he was doing. But at the time,
it's hard to tell.
You just had to trust him.
Yeah, one of the things that that kind of struck me as I was preparing for this message, and I touched on this yesterday and on Saturday, is this reality that the human mind is hardwired to stare at what is broken and glance at what is beautiful. Yeah. The human mind is just hardwired to fixate on what is broken and painful and barely glance at what we should be grateful for, what's beautiful in our lives. And the providence of God, this doctrine of God's providence, forces us to switch that lens and basically say, hey, don't just stare at the painful things of your life. Don't just stare at the suffering you're enduring. Look for, again, the fingerprints of God's goodness in the midst of this. Begin to stare at what's beautiful in your life. There's always some beauty there, even if you've got to look really hard for it. There's always something redemptive happening. There's always something good happening. And if we can train our hearts and our minds to hold on to that. I think about the verse in Philippians, whatever is good, whatever is kind, whatever is lovely, whatever is beautiful, think on these things. That's an exercise in learning to put on the lens of God's providence for your life, knowing that He's in there. He's in the midst of this, working this out for good. But it is so easy to stare at what's broken and to fixate on what's wrong and to miss the goodness that's available to us and happening in our lives right in the middle of it.
Yeah. Well, you made a statement, if I remember this correctly, but it's about our perspective and our pain, right? That you're how did you say it? Our perspective is only as big, or it shrinks down to the level of our suffering.
Yeah, it's the idea our lens of the world, our perspective on the world is diminished to the size of our discomfort. And it's this idea of like when we're in pain, all we see is the pain.
Right.
It's like if we're walking through a season of relational pain, it consumes us. If we're walking through physical sickness, it consumes us. If we're walking through a season of anxiety or depression, it consumes us. And the focus becomes how do I make it stop? Right. How do I get rid of this pain? All I'm really focused on right now is how do I make the pain go away, either by numbing out or fixing the problem or whatever it is. And that's just a reality of human life. Our lens of life gets shrunk down to the size of our pain. And providence invites us again and again and again to say, hey, there's more than just your pain happening right here.
Right. And it takes a disproportionate amount of effort, though. Because like if you ever had like a really bad headache,
yes,
and you just can't think about anything but how do I get rid of this headache? Like it's understandable that you would want to do that. You want a resolution.
Yeah.
Right? We want to get back to normal.
Yeah.
But I think what happens with a lot of us is we get into the discomfort, the tensions, and we don't really have a vision for what's on the other side of it. We just want to get back to the familiar. And so it takes a disproportionate amount of like turning your eyes up to the unseen versus what is seen, because what is seen is temporary, what is unseen is eternal. Yeah. Well, that's no easy task, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And in doing that, then maybe we can push through, like learn the lesson.
Yes.
Like instead of keep circling the airport.
Yes.
God brings us through the discomfort and the tension and the pain into a new season. And I think what happens with a lot of us though is we bounce off of it.
Yeah.
And we go back to the familiar. When God is trying to bring something better into your life, and you can resist it, and we do, right? But I guess that the admonition is to say, like, let's let God lead us through the valley of the shadow of death.
Yes, that's great.
And not just like step back into the old me.
Yeah. I think this is so important, and I think what I have found in every season of my life where God was bringing me out of something comfortable but destructive and into something new, there was always a cross to bear. There was a valley to navigate. There was a season of suffering and pain, and there was no way out of what was binding me, except for going through the pain.
Yeah.
The only way out was through.
Yeah.
There's no like, I'm just going to walk around this one or I'm going to find a shortcut. It's like, no, you've got to go through this. And when you start to bump up against that pain in your life, the temptation is to be like, this is too much. It's too hard. I just want to go back to the way it was. When everything you actually want is on the other side of that death, that's where the resurrection, the new life is. It's on the other side of that dying to yourself, on that reality of death. And that's the progression of the Christian life.
That'll preach.
It is cross, resurrection, death, new life, death, new life. Right. It's this Easter rhythm that we're called and invited to live into by faith in Jesus Christ. And the beauty of walking with Jesus is that, man, the deaths that he's calling us to die are always for our good, and they always lead to some resurrection and some reality of new life in our marriage and our relationships and our soul and our minds and our bodies. It's never just death for the sake of death or pain for the sake of pain. It is always unto something greater and something better. and something redemptive in our lives. And I think that's so important to hang on to.
Well, and it's interesting you should say that, because I feel like the Lord has brought even my family through something very similar, in that sometimes it's a death to expectations about how you thought things were going to be. It's a crucifixion
So good.
of your expectation. Yeah. And the thing is like, because I have faith in Jesus, I know there's a resurrection coming. But here's the problem. It's Saturday.
Yeah.
Between Friday and Sunday, there's a Saturday. And with the disciples, it's like, they didn't know. There was just confusion, disillusionment, anxiety. Maybe they're just like, well, I guess this is it, right? Is this it? And so, but then in hindsight, well, there is a resurrection that comes. And then you look back on those 3 days and go, oh, right? It's a whole new way of being. And I know we both love this passage, so I'm going to read this here from Romans chapter 5. Paul is making this statement. He's like, since we've been justified by faith, in other words, our whole relationship with God is through faith.
Yeah.
He says this, but we can rejoice in our sufferings, right? Rejoice in our sufferings, because knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who's been given to us. Well, he says a whole lot right there. But I mean, just the tensions, the affliction, the discomfort, the pain, the loss. God has this divine jujitsu that he does by turning it on its head to produce endurance that you didn't have before, right? Character that you didn't have.
Yeah.
And you have the seal of the Holy Spirit who's pouring his love into you as you walk through that whole thing, because you're not alone.
Yeah.
Even sometimes when you feel like you're alone.
So good, man. I want to share another verse. I think that verse nails it so well. And, Paul, this theme of suffering and new life and death and new life is
over and
all
over
throughout his letters. I mean, it's just, his writing is saturated with it. He experienced it in his own life. But in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 16, it says, we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. And then he goes down into verse 17. For this light momentary affliction is working for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Because we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. For the things that are seen are temporary, but the things that are unseen are eternal. That's a wild verse.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, first off, what Paul is referring to here by light and momentary affliction or suffering is torture, imprisonment. He's been stoned and left for dead. He's been flogged. He's been in prison. He's been in chains. He's been persecuted. He's been beaten. He's been shipwrecked. The guy has had a brutal life.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, all this light and momentary affliction. I'm like, one of those things, I'd be like, that was the worst moment of my entire life. I'm done, right? Just one of them, I'd be like, I don't know if I can do this. And Paul is just this stalwart figure of resilience in the face of suffering. And he goes, all of this is working something, an eternal weight of glory into me. It's pulling my identity and my affection and all these things off of the temporary world, and it's anchoring it to eternity into something so much better. It's shaping in me an eternal weight of glory. And he's like, look, I'm not focused on just what I'm seeing here. There's an unseen work that God is doing in my life, and that's what I'm believing in through all of this. And I think oftentimes thinking about expectations, I've had so many seasons of my life where if let me just start this over. I want to get this right because I feel like this is so important. When it comes to expectations for our life, there are so many seasons, especially I can think of in my life, where I've had this picture on the wall of my mind or my heart of what I was expecting my life to be like at age 30 or age 35 or age 40. Here's what I'm expecting of my life. And now, 41 years old, I look at that sort of picture that was sort of in my heart or mind back when I was younger, and I'm like, man, there's some things that are there that I was hoping or dreaming or expecting, but a lot of it is way different than I thought. I never would have thought I'd be in Kansas. I'm in Kansas now. Here we are.
Preach.
So this expectation was like, okay, at some point, I need to sort of take whatever expectation I had off the wall. Not to say dreams and expectations for life are a bad thing, but I need to put up reality on the wall and say, okay, can I fall in love with this?
Yeah.
Can I love what God is doing and where I am right now? Yeah. Things aren't going how I thought or planned. This is what's actually happening. Can I show up for my real life, fall in love with what God is doing right here and the people he's put right here in my life, and realize in all this, he's working out an eternal weight of glory. Yeah. And in all of this, man, there are things unseen that far outweigh the things that are seen. And God is doing a providential work for my good and his glory.
And it's never a straight line.
It is never a straight line.
I mean, we like to think of our lives in this linear way, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get there, I'm going to get that degree, I'm going to get that job, I'm going to move to that neighborhood. And
5-year plan, 10-year plan.
And it's like, it's a joke, right? Because at least in my life, it's been a joke because I'm an orchestrator.
Yeah.
I'll plan my life and yours and everyone's out, and it'll be really great.
Yeah.
But God consistently comes out of my blind spot with something better than I had planned. Consistently, his surprises have always been better than my plans, even when it was really hard. I mean, awful. But on the other side of that, he's shown himself faithful, even when I wasn't feeling it in the moment. He showed himself to be caring and loving and providing that I just couldn't see at the time.
Yeah.
Even when you're just going, you know what? I have a really good plan here. I just need you to bless it. I need you to just drop a little Jesus dust on my plan and make it work. And it's like, son, your plan's okay. Yeah. But I got something better for you.
Yeah.
But you got to trust me with it.
Yeah, and sometimes I think one of the greatest pains in this life is we may not ever experience the better until eternity.
Yeah. Like everyone in Hebrews chapter 11.
Yes, like everyone in that chapter of the Bible. It's like they never got to experience the fulfillment of the promise. And they went through hell. Yeah. They went through the most difficult things. And there is that eternal weight of glory that we're holding on to and looking with the eyes of faith and realizing that, man, even if I don't experience, what I hoped for or dreamed of in this life, walking by faith, I'm trusting in a heavenly Father that is a healer and redeemer of all things, and he's got eternity to work this thing out. He's got eternity to begin healing and bringing perspective to the pain that I walk through in a broken world. And I think that's what C.S. Lewis was getting onto when he thought about just the eternal weight of glory.
Didn't he say something? I think it was Lewis who said, all of our hurts, all this suffering, when we get to the other side, is going to seem like one night in an inconvenient hotel.
Yes.
And I just want to go back to something you pointed out in the message, that the ultimate picture of God's faithfulness and his redemptive power is the cross.
Yes.
The greatest conceivable evil.
Yes.
Right? Turned out to be the greatest conceivable good.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we can just see our own lives as like that God can be trusted. He's worth putting all your chips across the table.
Yes.
And doubling down on Jesus, because he proved with an empty tomb that suffering and hurt and death not only are not the end, but they mean that God is not disinterested in your hurt.
That is it, Troy. And I want to read this for us because, and we can close with this, Acts 2. This is so profound. Here's why we can trust that the providence of God is at work and at play in our lives, because we do not serve a God who was distant or disconnected from the pain and the reality of our lives. He entered into it. And listen to these words out of Acts 2, starting in verse 22. Peter is preaching. He says, "Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty signs and wonders that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. This Jesus," listen to this, "was delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God." So why was Jesus crucified? Because God planned it that way. The definite plan and foreknowledge of God. Jesus was born to die. That's the reason he came. And then he goes on to say, "You crucified and killed him. He was crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. God raised him up, loosing the pains of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it." So the question is, okay, did God do this or did man do this?
Yes.
Yes. And that's how the providence of God works, right? God, the evil actions of lawless people who betrayed and murdered the perfect Son of God, those evil actions are not performed by God. That is performed from the jealous hearts of the religious leaders and the Sadducees and the Pharisees and the political leaders who saw Jesus as a threat, and all the different complications that were happening in Jerusalem when Jesus was arrested, betrayed, sentenced to death and crucified. All of that, was a part of God's plan to bring about the salvation of the world. And it was also the result of evil actions from broken men and women who hated who Jesus was and hated, what he was saying to them. And he wasn't doing things according to their plan or their agenda or all these sort of things. And so God can use the evil actions of people with very bad intentions to actually bring about salvation and goodness and glory and the salvation of the whole world. Yeah. He does it over and over and over again. So why would we think that he cannot do the same in our lives when we are facing things like betrayal and hardship and pain? If he can do this with Jesus, he did it in his son Jesus, then he can do it for us and in our lives.
So let me ask you one last question here then.
Yeah.
If what would you say to, like, say, a 22-year-old young man who's looking at his life out in front of him and doesn't know where it's going? He's already starting to experience like the real tensions of adulting and all of that. What posture should that guy take as he moves forward with his life?
I would say a couple things. You don't have to know the plan. You won't know the plan before you don't have to know the plan before you start to move forward in your life. You think about the way forward, this whole sermon series. I think sometimes many of us are stuck or feel frozen because we're like, God, what do you want me to do? What should I do? If you're in your 20s, go try something. Go do something, right? Just begin stumbling your way forward until you begin to see, oh, here's what I'm good at, or here's what I like, or here's what I don't like, or here's what I'm learning in this season. Man, the 20s are a season where you are learning and you are stumbling your way forward. And rest assured, as long as you're seeking God, as your heart is to please him, as your heart is to honor him with your life, as you're trying to find, who am I supposed to marry? What's my career supposed to be? As long as you're in community, seeking wisdom from older mentors in Christ, seeking to walk by faith, man, move out into the world, go try things, get after it. Try starting a business, try working for a corporation, try any number of things and begin to figure out, man, what am I good at? What am I willing to wake up for and give my all for every single day until I become actually good at that thing, which won't happen for years. Right. It takes time. But realizing that you're going to make some mistakes, you're going to take some wrong turns. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. There is no straight line from where you are to a sense of fulfillment and calling. Yeah. Stumble your way forward by faith, trusting that the providence of God is going to work and weave all of that together for good. And he's going to get you where he wants you to be.
Yeah.
He's going to get you there. And I think that's the most important thing to remember in that whole process.
That's awesome. Thank you, my friend.
Love this, bro.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's great stuff, man. Well, friends, I pray this was encouraging for you. I pray that this would just be a source of hope and joy and encouragement for you, no matter what you might be walking through in this season, just this reality of the providence of God. If you missed the sermon, you can check it out. It's called Detours, Delays, and the Goodness of God. Again, just a reminder, like, subscribe, do all the things, share this with a friend if you think this conversation would be helpful for someone else. We're praying for you. Hope to see you at church this coming Sunday. Blessings, and we'll see you soon.